Tank news now. Defence Minister and former cop who puts the B in ACAB, Peter Dutton, has committed Australia to spending $3.5 billion on tanks for war. War! What is it good for? Filling the pockets of industries and politicians. Say it again, y'all. We have committed to buying 75 Abrams main battle tanks, 29 assault breacher vehicles, 17 joint assault breach vehicles, 6 Hercules combat recovery vehicles, and 122 gas turbine engines. All of this is on the heels of the AUKUS Security Pact. America looked at our contribution to the Security Pact and thought, well, where are all the superfluous tanks sitting idle to justify the spending of a runaway overblown military budget? Come on, Australia, get your shit together. And frankly, it was just in time too, as Russia is knocking on the border of the Ukraine, and they have been interested in joining NATO, so we should show some support for this new friend. Although we did offer some help, as Foreign Affairs Minister Maurice Payne asked top security officials to discuss cyber assistance with their Ukrainian counterparts. A key component of our cyber classes will be declaring false DDoS attacks and setting up a website incapable of handling the basic expectations of traffic to that specific site. We are like the judo masters of cyber attacks. By having such a terrible broadband and we use the enemy's strength against them, it becomes their weakness. Fortunately, Australia has also invested so heavily in military vehicles, which will be ready to roll out in 2025, just in time to fight an army of Boston Dynamics robot dogs that were bought by Putin. I'm sure he's got a bunch of them just sitting around. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, Australia has not deployed a tank in combat since the Vietnam War, and even pro-war army spokespeople have questioned the usefulness of tanks, arguing the government should focus on potential regional maritime and air conflicts, which it can be argued that we have been doing by investing in submarines, then not worrying about those submarines and investing in other submarines. So we've got our nautical conflicts covered. We've got so many not submarines coming. Last year, following the AUKUS deal, Dutton announced military spending would rise to $50 billion a year, which wouldn't surprise anyone as we have been gunning to be a major player in the arms business for a while now. Plans, which at the time were attacked as exporting death and profiting from bloodshed, a major change from the traditional means of making money in Australia, exporting slow death and profiting from the baking of the planet. Though former Defence Industry Minister and man demonstrating his feelings on being a warmonger is A-OK, Christopher Pyne did commit to not exporting weapons willy-nilly. We couldn't have that. Sparking my great idea for an Australian movie nobody will watch. Willy-nilly and the Gun Factory. 'Cause I got a golden pistol. So that was us being responsible. At the time, Pyne said an expanded arms industry could create jobs and investment in Australia, given that the country already had skilled workers, an advanced manufacturing base, and the technological capacity. And certainly, there isn't any other growth industry that is uniquely suited to the Australian climate, like, say, solar power, or a literal growth industry that could benefit people struggling with their mental and physical health, as well as boost the snack economy like marijuana. We could only have gone with guns, obviously. Plus, we don't have a pristine international reputation for gun control, so we wouldn't have to worry about ruining that. Though, selling guns is certainly a good way of keeping them out of Australia, like we do with carbon emissions. We sell coal to other countries, and they become their carbon emissions, while we remain carefree to enjoy the benefits of more tourism to our increasingly warm country. And guys, I know you're all feeling very critical of this whole idea, but rest assured, it will certainly have nothing to do with the former Defence Minister going on to be an advisor to one of the country's biggest beneficiaries of defence contracts, the Brisbane-based NIOA. Less than a month after leaving his federal parliament, because that'd be unethical. And we don't do unethical in this country. So, why are we so committed to the arms industry? First, as an attempt to be a top 10 seller, then by becoming the second biggest importer after Saudi Arabia? Well, we have done some analysis and we have come to an undeniable conclusion. Over the coming years, Australia will spend somewhere between 30 billion and 42 billion on armoured vehicles. This will include a fleet of infantry fighting vehicles which will likely be announced later this year at a cost of between 18 billion and 27 billion, and possibly as much as 171 billion on submarines, all objects designed to kill. While the Australian government has had a real hard time publicly accepting its role in the climate change saga as one of the largest exporters of coal, Australia has done something quite rare for this country. We have learned from the past. See, there's been some studies that show that Genghis Khan's army had a positive impact on climate change. So we need to build our own army, bigger and more powerful, so that we can also have a positive impact on climate change. But how? I hear you asking. How? I hear you crying out. Did Genghis Khan have a positive impact on climate change? Well, like this. His horde killed so many people that whole towns were rewilded. They were destroyed and trees grew up in their place. Natural plants grew and it was all going on, which allowed for natural growth to start to absorb CO2 again. So we, as a country, must do our part to counteract our own impact on climate change by blowing up large sections of the world. It's simple.